When the police lights flashed outside DeAndre Washington's window that rainy evening, he had no idea his life was about to change forever. One minute, he was a normal teenager walking home from basketball practice, and the next, he was being called a criminal. But in the shadows, watching with fierce eyes, was someone who knew the truth. His sister, Zora. And she wasn't about to let anyone take her brother away. Not when she could feel in her bones that something about this whole thing wasn't right. The clock was ticking, evidence was hidden, and dangerous secrets were about to come to light in the small town of Millfield. DeAndre Washington pulled his hoodie tighter against the cold rain as he walked home from basketball practice. The streetlights were just coming on in Millfield, making yellow circles on the wet sidewalk. His muscles ached from Coach Torres's tough drills, but it felt good. The team had a big game on Saturday, and DeAndre had a real shot at starting. He smiled, thinking about how proud Mom would be. She worked double shifts at the hospital to keep their family going since Dad left. His sister Zora always came to his games too, cheering louder than anyone else. He needed to hurry home. Zora was making her famous mac and cheese tonight. The sound of tires screeching made DeAndre turn. A police car raced toward him, then another. They stopped right in front of him, blocking his path. Before DeAndre could even think, officers jumped out with guns pointed at him. "Get on the ground! Now! Hands where we can see them!" a tall officer shouted. DeAndre's heart hammered in his chest. "What? What did I do?" "On the ground!" the officer screamed louder. DeAndre dropped to his knees, then lay flat on the wet pavement. Cold rainwater soaked through his clothes. The officers rushed forward, one pressing a knee hard into his back, while another yanked his arms behind him. The cold metal of handcuffs bit into his wrists. "DeAndre Washington, you're under arrest for armed robbery and assault," the officer said, breathing hard. "What? No, I didn't rob anybody," DeAndre cried, his voice cracking. "I was at basketball practice. Ask Coach Torres." The officers ignored him, roughly pulling him to his feet. Neighbors watched from porches and windows. Mrs. Jenkins, who always gave DeAndre cookies, stood frozen with her hand over her mouth. Mr. Patel from the corner store shook his head slowly. "I didn't do anything," DeAndre shouted, tears mixing with raindrops on his face. Through blurry eyes, he saw Coach Torres running toward them from down the block, still in his whistle and clipboard. "Officer, wait," Coach called. "That's my player. He was with me until—" "Stay back, sir," another officer warned, holding up his hand. "This is police business." They pushed DeAndre into the back of a police car. The door slammed shut, cutting off Coach Torres's protests. Through the window, DeAndre could see his coach arguing with the officers, pointing at his clipboard, probably trying to explain about practice. The ride to the police station was the longest 15 minutes of DeAndre's life. His wet clothes clung to him, making him shiver. The handcuffs dug into his wrists every time the car turned. The two officers in front talked about a baseball game like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't just grabbed an innocent kid off the street. At the station, they took his fingerprints and a photo. They made him empty his pockets. Just his phone, keys, and $7 for his lunch tomorrow. An officer led him to a small room with nothing but a metal table and 2 chairs. "Wait here," the officer said, closing the door. DeAndre sat alone for what felt like forever. His stomach growled. He'd missed dinner. His mind raced with confusion and fear. What store was robbed? Why did they think it was him? Would his mom be able to fix this? The door finally opened. A heavy-set man in a wrinkled suit walked in with a folder. His nameplate read, "Detective Morris." "DeAndre Washington," he said, sitting down heavily. "You're in serious trouble, son." "Sir, I didn't do anything," DeAndre said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I was at basketball practice. Then I was walking home. That's it." Detective Morris opened the folder and slid out a grainy black and white photo. It showed someone in a dark hoodie pointing something at a store clerk. "This was taken at Sweet's Corner Market at 6:15 this evening," Morris said. The clerk was pistol-whipped, needed 8 stitches. DeAndre stared at the photo. The person's face wasn't clear at all. "That's not me," he said firmly. "Really?" "Same. Height, same build, same hoodie you're wearing right now. Lots of people have black hoodies. You can't even see their face." Morris leaned forward. "We have a witness who ID'd you, DeAndre. The clerk recognized you. You've been in that store before, haven't you?" "Yeah, everybody goes to Sweets. That doesn't mean you were picked out of a lineup. We have the weapon in your neighborhood. Just make this easy on yourself and confess." Tears welled up again. "I want to call my mom." Morris sighed like DeAndre was being difficult. "Fine." One phone call. With shaking fingers, DeAndre dialed home. When his mom answered, he couldn't hold back his sobs. "Mom, they arrested me. They say I robbed Sweets, but I didn't. I was at practice." "DeAndre? Baby, calm down." His mother Letitia's voice was tight with fear. "Where are you?" "The police station downtown." "Mom, they're saying I hurt somebody." "I'm coming right now. Don't say anything else until I get there." An hour later, DeAndre sat in a different room. His mother and Zora rushed in, both looking terrified. "Baby, are you hurt?" Mom asked, hugging him tight. "I'm okay," DeAndre whispered. "Just scared." Zora's eyes were red from crying, but her jaw was set hard. "They can't do this. They have the wrong person." A tired-looking officer appeared at the UID. "Doctor." "Mrs. Washington, we're charging your son with armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. Bail is set at $50,000, Mom gasped. $50,000? We don't have that kind of money. Then he'll be held at the juvenile detention center until his court date, the officer said flatly. This isn't right, Zora burst out. My brother is innocent. As two officers came to take DeAndre away, Zora grabbed his hand. Listen to me, Dre, she said fiercely. I'll figure this out. I swear I will. The last thing DeAndre saw was his sister's determined face as they led him away, still wearing his damp basketball clothes, to a cell where he didn't belong. The juvenile detention center smelled like bleach and sweat. DeAndre sat on a thin mattress in a room barely bigger than his closet at home. They had taken his basketball clothes and given him an orange jumpsuit that was too big. The sleeves hung past his hands, making him look even younger than 15. Guard had brought him here after processing, explaining rules that DeAndre could barely hear through the fog of shock. No talking after lights out. No leaving your room without permission. Meals at 7, 12, and 5. One phone call a day. Your roommate will be back from rec time soon, the guard had said before leaving. Try not to cause trouble. Trouble? DeAndre had never been in trouble in his life. He got good grades. He helped old Mrs. Jenkins with her groceries. He watched his little cousins for free when Aunt Tanya needed to work. Now he was locked up like a criminal. The door opened, and a boy about DeAndre's age walked in. He was taller, with arms corded, with muscle and a scar through his right eyebrow. You the new kid? He asked, looking DeAndre up and down. DeAndre nodded, trying not to show fear. I'm Marcus, the boy said, dropping onto the other bed. What are you in for? I didn't do anything, DeAndre said. They think I robbed a store, but I was at basketball practice." Marcus laughed without humor. "Yeah, half the guys in here didn't do anything. The other half are proud of what they did. Either way, doesn't matter in here." He leaned forward. "Listen up. Don't trust nobody in here. Not the other guys, not the guards. Especially not the guards. Keep your head down and your mouth shut." That night, DeAndre couldn't sleep. The mattress springs dug into his back. Someone down the hall was crying. Another person kept shouting until a guard yelled for quiet. DeAndre stared at the ceiling, thinking about home. Mom would be sitting up worried. Zora would be making plans. She always had a plan. Morning came too soon. At breakfast, DeAndre sat alone, picking at rubbery eggs. The other boys watched him, the new kid, fresh meat. One older boy, accidentally, bumped his tray, spilling milk across the table. DeAndre said nothing, just like Marcus advised. Days blurred together. Wake up, eat, sit in classes that were way behind his regular school, eat again, yard time where he stayed close to the wall, eat once more, then back to the tiny room. Every day at 3 p.m., he got his phone call. "Mom?" he asked, when she finally picked up on the fourth day. "DeAndre, baby, are you okay?" Her voice sounded thin and worried. "I'm okay," he lied. "Have you talked to my lawyer?" "Mr. Winters came by yesterday. He's working on things." DeAndre could hear what she wasn't saying. The public defender wasn't giving them much hope. "Coach Torres gave a statement saying you were at practice," Mom continued. "But they say practice ended at 5:45 and the robbery was at 6:15. There's 30 minutes they can't account for." DeAndre's heart sank. "But I walked straight home. I didn't go near Sweets Market." "I know, baby. We're trying to prove it." His mother sounded exhausted. DeAndre knew she was picking up extra shifts to pay for a lawyer they couldn't afford. "How's Zora?" he asked, changing the subject. "She's determined, barely sleeps, always on her laptop or out talking to people." That sounded like his sister. When Zora set her mind to something, nothing could stop her. A week passed before Mr. Winters visited. He was a middle-aged man with thinning hair and tired eyes. He spread papers on the table between them in the visiting room. "The evidence doesn't look good, DeAndre," he said without greeting. "The store clerk identified you from photos. They found a black hoodie like the one in the video at your house. The robbery happened at 6:15, and basketball practice ended at 5:45. But I was helping Coach put equipment away, and then I walked straight home. I didn't rob anyone." Mr. Winters sighed. "Your coach confirms you stayed after, but only for about 10 minutes. That still leaves 20 minutes unaccounted for. 20 minutes I spent walking home. Without witnesses," Mr. Winters pointed out. "Look, kid, the DA is offering a deal. Plead guilty to a lesser charge. No armed element, just robbery. 3 years, maybe out in 18 months with good behavior." DeAndre felt like he'd been punched. 18 months? For something I didn't do? If we go to trial and lose, you're looking at 5 to 7 years. You're being tried as an adult because of the weapon involved? Tears burned in DeAndre's eyes. "But I'm innocent." Mr. Winters gathered his papers. "The system doesn't care about innocent. It cares about evidence. Think about the deal." After he left, DeAndre returned to his room and curled up on his bed. For the first time since his arrest, he allowed himself to cry openly. Marcus pretended not to notice. The next day, Zora came to visit. Her eyes had dark circles under them, but they burned with determination. "Don't give up," she said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "The truth is going to come out." DeAndre wanted to believe her, but after 2 weeks behind bars, hope was getting harder to hold on to. Zora Washington stared at her brother's empty chair at the dinner table. Mom had still set his place, like she did every night since his arrest. A plate, fork, knife, and glass, all waiting for someone who couldn't come home. "Eat your food, honey," Mom said softly. "You need your strength." Zora picked at her peas. "I can't focus on anything, Mom. Not food, not school. All I think about is DeAndre sitting in that horrible place." "I know." Mom's voice cracked. "I called Mr. Winters again today. He says we should consider the plea deal." "No!" Zora slammed her hand on the table. "DeAndre is innocent. We're not letting him plead guilty to something he didn't do." After dinner, Zora went to her room and opened her laptop. She had created a free DeAndre page on social media, posting updates and asking for witnesses who might have seen her brother walking home that night. Most comments were supportive, but some weren't. "He should have thought about his family before robbing that store," one person wrote. "Another criminal off the streets," wrote someone else. Zora slammed her laptop shut, tears burning her eyes. Even some kids at school avoided her now, like having a brother in juvenile detention was catching. The next day, after school, Zora walked to Sweet's Corner Market. She had been there countless times for milk or bread, but now the familiar store felt different. Mr. Sweet was behind the counter, a bandage still on his forehead where he'd been hit during the robbery. "Mr. Sweet?" Zora approached carefully. "I'm Zora Washington, DeAndre's sister." The man's face hardened. "I know who you are. Your brother nearly cracked my skull open." "My brother didn't do it, Mr. Sweet. He was at basketball practice, then walking home." "Tell it to the judge." Mr. Sweet turned away. "I saw him with my own eyes. The police have their guy. Case closed." Zora left the store, frustration building inside her. She decided to walk DeAndre's usual route home from school. Pulling out her phone, she started the timer. From the school gym to their house was exactly 27 minutes at a normal pace. She checked the police report again, which Mom had gotten from Mr. Winters. The robbery happened at 6:15 p.m. Basketball practice ended at 5:45 p.m. "That doesn't add up," Zora muttered to herself. Even if DeAndre left right when practice ended, he wouldn't have had time to get to Sweet's, rob it, and disappear before the police came. She needed to talk to Coach Torres. She found him in his office, grading. "Papers!" "Zora," he said, standing up. "How's DeAndre holding up?" "Not good, Coach. That's why I need your help." She sat down across from him. "What time exactly did DeAndre leave practice that day?" Coach Torres rubbed his neck. Practice officially ended at 5:45, but DeAndre stayed to help put away equipment. "He left around 6, maybe a few minutes after." Zora's heart raced. "You're sure? You can swear to that?" "Absolutely. I told the police the same thing, but they didn't seem to care." He shook his head. "I've known that boy since he was in 7th grade. No way he robbed that store. If he left at 6 Tucker, he couldn't have made it to Sweet's by 6:15, Zora said excitedly. "It's not physically possible." "Without a car, no way," Coach agreed. "But Zora, the police have a witness, Mr. Sweet himself, who identified DeAndre. They found a black hoodie at your house that matches the one in the video. DeAndre has a black hoodie. So do half the kids in school." Zora stood up. "Thanks, Coach. This helps." That night, Zora found her mother at the kitchen table, bills spread out before her, crying quietly. "Mom? What's wrong?" Mom quickly wiped her eyes. "It's nothing, baby." Zora picked up one of the papers. It was a past due notice for their mortgage. "Are we Are we going to lose the house? No, no, Mom said, but her voice wasn't convincing. I'm just, without DeAndre's part-time job helping, and with the lawyer costs, it's tight right now. DeAndre had worked weekends at the hardware store, giving most of his money to help with bills. Now that income was gone, along with the money they were spending on legal fees. The next day, instead of going to debate club after school, Zora walked to Millie's diner. "You looking for a job, honey?" Millie asked when Zora inquired. "Yes, ma'am. I can work evenings after school and weekends." "Don't you have that big debate competition coming up? Your teacher was in here bragging about you just last week." Zora swallowed hard. Some things are more important right now. By the end of the week, Zora had a routine. School until 3:00, visit DeAndre when she could, work at the diner from 4:00 to 10:00, then home to research her brother's case until she fell asleep on her keyboard. Her grades were slipping, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Every free moment, she walked around town, showing DeAndre's photo, asking if anyone had seen him walking home that night. Most people shook their heads or looked away. During her visits with DeAndre, she kept her voice bright, telling him about her progress, even when there wasn't much to tell. He looked thinner each time, with dark circles under his eyes. His voice was flatter, his shoulders hunched. "I found out you couldn't have made it to Sweets in time," she told him during one visit. "You were still at school at 6 hours, and the robbery was at 6:15. It's not physically possible." "Did you tell Mr. Winters?" DeAndre asked, a small spark of hope in his eyes. "Yeah, but he says it's not enough. We need proof you were somewhere else at 6:15, or proof someone else did it." DeAndre nodded, the spark fading. "Zora, you don't have to do all this. You should be focusing on school, on debate team, your future." Zora reached across the table and gripped his hands. "You are my future, Dre. We're family. And I'm not giving up until you're home where you belong." As the guard signaled the end of visiting hours, Zora gathered her things. "I'm close to something," she said. "I can feel it." The dinner rush at Millie's diner meant non-stop movement for Zora, carrying plates, refilling coffee, smiling even when her feet hurt. The tips weren't great, but every dollar helped with the bills piling up at home. "Order up," Millie called from the kitchen window. As Zora grabbed the plates of meatloaf, she overheard two men talking in a booth nearby. "That Washington kid's trial is next month," one said. "Bet they throw the book at him." "Good," the other replied. "One less thug on the streets." Zora's hands shook. She wanted to spill hot coffee on them both. Instead, she took a deep breath and delivered the meatloaf to table 7, where an older woman with silver hair sat alone, reading a book. "Can I get you anything else, ma'am?" Zora asked. The woman looked up with kind eyes. "No, thank you, dear. This is perfect." As Zora turned to leave, the woman added, "You're the Washington boy's sister, aren't you? I recognize you from the newspaper." Zora tensed. Was this going to be more judgment? "Yes, ma'am. DeAndre is my brother." The woman shook her head sadly. "They got the wrong boy." Zora nearly dropped her tray. "What did you say?" "I said they got the wrong boy." The woman gestured to the empty seat across from her. "Sit down a moment, if you can." Zora glanced around. The rush was slowing, and Millie was busy in the kitchen. She slid into the booth. "I'm Mrs. Gladwell," the woman said. "I live in the Blue House across from Sweets Market." You saw something?" Zora's heart pounded. Mrs. Gladwell nodded. "I walk my dog, Pepper, every evening at 6. We were across the street when someone ran out of sweets that night. A boy, yes, but not your brother." "How do you know it wasn't DeAndre?" Zora asked, leaning forward. "I've seen your brother around the neighborhood. Polite boy, tall like your father was." Mrs. Gladwell sipped her tea. "This boy was shorter, and he ran with a limp, favoring his right leg. Very distinctive." Zora felt lightheaded. Finally, someone who had seen something. "Did you tell the police?" Mrs. Gladwell looked down at her plate. "I tried. I called the station the next day and asked to speak to someone about the robbery. Detective Morris took my call. When I told him what I saw, he said they already had their suspect in custody. He didn't even take my name." "But you're an eyewitness," Zora said, a little too loudly. A few customers looked over. "Keep your voice down, dear," Mrs. Gladwell said gently. "Yes, I am. But I'm also an 80-year-old woman who wears glasses. They probably thought I didn't see clearly." Zora pulled out her phone. "Mrs. Gladwell, would you let me record what you just told me? It could help DeAndre." The woman hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, dear. Anything to help make this right." That night, Zora played the recording for her mother. "We need to get this to Mr. Winters right away," Mom said, hope in her voice for the first time in weeks. The next day, after school, they sat in Mr. Winters' cluttered office, playing Mrs. Gladwell's statement. The lawyer listened, taking notes, but didn't look as excited as Zora had hoped. "This is interesting," he said when the recording ended, "but eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. The prosecution will tear her apart. Her age, her eyesight, the fact she didn't come forward immediately." "She did come forward," Zora protested. "Detective Morris ignored her." "Which he'll deny," Mr. Winters said, rubbing his eyes. "Look, I'll interview Mrs. Gladwell and add her statement to our case, but we need more. Hard evidence that puts your brother somewhere else, at 6:15, or proves someone else committed the robbery." Zora and her mother left the office feeling deflated. The spark of hope was still there, but dimmer now. That weekend, Zora visited DeAndre again. What she saw scared her. Her brother's eyes were dull, his shoulders slumped. He'd lost weight, and a bruise darkened his left cheek. "What happened to your face?" she asked immediately. "Nothing," he mumbled. "DeAndre," he sighed. "Some guys jumped me in the bathroom, said I was too quiet, thought I was better than them." He tried to smile. "You should see the other guys. Did the guards help?" DeAndre's laugh was bitter. "The guards put me in isolation for fighting, 3 days in a room by myself." Zora reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I've been thinking about that plea deal," he said quietly. "No, Dre, we found a witness who saw the real robber. She says he had a limp." DeAndre just stared at the table. "Mr. Winters called. Said it wasn't enough. Said we'd probably lose at trial." His voice broke. "I can't do this anymore, Zora. 3 years is better than 7. Maybe I can finish high school inside, get out when I'm 18. "You'd have a record for something you didn't do," Zora said, tears filling her eyes. "Your life would be ruined." "My life is already ruined," DeAndre snapped, then immediately looked guilty. "I'm sorry, I'm tired of fighting." Zora grabbed both his hands, forcing him to look at her. 3 more days, she said fiercely. "Give me 3 more days before you decide. I've got new leads, Dre. I'm not giving up." DeAndre looked at his sister for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 3 days. But then, I'm taking the deal. Zora barely slept that night. 3 days to save her brother. 72 hours to find proof that would convince a judge of what she already knew: DeAndre was innocent. The next morning, she skipped school. Mom would be mad, but this was more important. She pulled up a map of Millfield on her phone and traced the route from the high school to Sweets Market. There were at least 6 businesses along that path. Security cameras, she whispered to herself. There has to be footage. Her first stop was Millfield Bank. A security guard at the door frowned when she asked about accessing their outdoor camera footage. That's private bank property, miss. We don't share that with the public. But it could help prove my brother's innocence, Zora protested. You'll need a court order, the guard said firmly, or talk to the police. The pharmacy was next. The Idoidic manager was kinder but equally unhelpful. Our cameras only keep footage for 14 days, honey. It's been over a month since that robbery. Zora felt panic rising in her chest. What if all the footage was gone? At the laundromat, the owner didn't even have cameras pointing toward the street. The coffee shop's cameras had been broken since last summer. By afternoon, she had struck out at 5 places. Her last hope was Ted's Auto Shop, which stood at the corner where DeAndre would have turned if he'd been walking toward Sweets. The shop smelled of oil and rubber. A man in a grease-stained uniform looked up from under a car hood as the bell above the door jingled. "Can I help you?" he asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "Mr. Ramirez?" Zora asked, recognizing him from around town. "I'm Zora Washington. I was wondering if your shop has security cameras that face the street." The man studied her. "You're DeAndre's sister." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. I'm trying to prove he couldn't have robbed Sweets Market. He was still at basketball practice until about 6 hours, and the robbery happened at 6:15. If we could just see if he walked past your shop that evening." "Or if he didn't," Mr. Ramirez nodded, understanding. "My son Miguel was friends with DeAndre in elementary school. Always was a good kid." He gestured for her to follow him to a small office. "I've got cameras on all 4 corners of the building. Been meaning to tell the police, but..." He shrugged. No one asked. Zora's heart leaped. "You still have the footage from that day?" "I keep everything for 60 days minimum. Insurance requirements." He sat at a computer and began clicking through files. "What day was the robbery again?" "Thursday, March 12th, Zora said, hardly daring to breathe. Around 6:15 p.m., Mr. Ramirez found the file and opened it. This camera faces the intersection. Anyone walking from the school to Sweets would have to pass here. Together, they watched the grainy footage. Mr. Ramirez fast-forwarded to 6:00 p.m., then slowed to normal speed. Cars passed. A woman walked. A dog. 2 middle school kids on bikes raced by. "There," Mr. Ramirez pointed at 6:10 p.m. That's when he'd need to pass by to reach Sweets by 6:15. They watched until 6:20. No sign of DeAndre. "He's not there," Zora whispered, her voice shaking with excitement. "He didn't walk past your shop." "Which means he couldn't have reached Sweets in time for the robbery," Mr. Ramirez finished. "Not unless he had a car or took a different route." "DeAndre doesn't have a car," Zora said. "And there's no faster route than this one." Mr. Ramirez burned the footage onto a USB drive for her. "I hope this helps your brother, Zora." "Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. You don't know what this means." She practically ran to Mr. Winters' office, bursting in without an appointment. The lawyer looked up, surprised, as she thrust the USB drive at him. "Proof," she said, breathless. "Security footage from Ted's Auto Shop. DeAndre never walked past there on his way to Sweets. He couldn't have committed the robbery." Mr. Winters plugged in the drive and watched the footage, his expression gradually changing from skeptical to interested. "This is helpful," he said finally. "Shows your brother wasn't on the most direct route from school to the store. So it proves he's innocent, right?" Zora asked eagerly. Mr. Winters sighed. "It's good evidence, but the prosecution will just say he took another route. There is no other route that makes sense. It would add at least 10 more minutes to go any other way. I know that, and you know that. But we need to convince a judge and jury. He handed the drive back to her. Keep looking for more evidence. Something that directly exonerates DeAndre or identifies the real robber. Frustrated but determined, Zora left. She had one shift at the diner before visiting DeAndre again. She needed to look her best for him, to keep his hopes up. The dinner rush was busy, but Zora moved mechanically, her mind still working on her brother's case. As she delivered a burger and fries to table 9, something caught her eye. The customer was wearing a black hoodie exactly like the one in the robbery footage. But it wasn't the hoodie that made her stop and stare. It was the way the boy walked when he got up to use the bathroom. A clear, distinctive limp favoring his right leg, just like Mrs. Gladwell had described. Zora nearly dropped her tray. She watched him return to his seat, studying his face. She recognized him now. Jaden Carter, a senior at her school. Known for getting into fights and skipping class. Could he be the real robber? As Jaden paid his bill and left, Zora made a split-second decision. She untied her apron and called to Millie. "Emergency! I need to leave early." Before Millie could respond, Zora was out the door, following Jaden at a safe distance, her heart pounding with the feeling that she was finally getting close to the truth that would free her brother. Zora kept half a block between her and Jaden as he limped down Main Street. The evening was growing dark, which helped her stay hidden. Twice he looked over his shoulder, and Zora ducked into doorways. She knew a little about Jaden Carter. He was a senior, 2 years ahead of DeAndre. He'd been suspended multiple times for fighting. Some kids said he sold stolen phones and shoes. Now, watching him move through town with that distinctive limp, Zora wondered if his criminal activities went beyond schoolyard deals. Jaden turned down Elm Street, away from the nicer part of town. Zora followed, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. If something happened, she could call for help. Though the growing darkness made her nervous, she wasn't about to lose this lead. After a few more blocks, Jaden stopped at a convenience store. Not Sweets, but a different one called Quick Stop. He went inside. Zora waited across the street, pretending to look at her phone. 5 minutes later, Jaden came out with a soda and continued walking. His next stop was a small house a few blocks away. A woman answered the door. His mother, Zora guessed. They spoke briefly. Then Jaden went inside. "Great," Zora muttered. Now what? She needed more than just a hunch about Jaden. She needed proof he was involved in the robbery. The next day at school, Zora watched Jaden in the cafeteria. He sat with a group of seniors, laughing loudly. Did he even know someone else was in juvenile detention for his crime? Did he care? After school, Zora looked up Jaden's address in the yearbook committee's records. He lived near Sweets Market, much closer than DeAndre, who lived on the other side of town. Another piece that fit. She spent the evening researching him online. His social media was mostly private, but she found comments from others hinting at past trouble. One girl had written, "Stay away from this thief," on an old photo. More interesting was a disciplinary notice she found on the school website's archive. Last year, Jaden had been expelled for stealing equipment from the science lab. He'd only been allowed back this year on strict probation. Zora took her findings to Detective Morris at the police station. The detective looked annoyed when she explained her theory. "Let me get this straight," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You want us to investigate a new suspect based on the fact that he walks with a limp and lives near the store and has a history of stealing. and matches the description from a witness you ignored," Zora said, trying to keep her voice steady. Morris's face hardened. "We have our perpetrator. Your brother was identified by the victim himself. Don't waste my time." "You're just lazy," Zora snapped. "You got someone quick so you could close the case, and you don't care if it's the wrong person." "That's enough." Morris stood up. "I understand you want to help your brother, but harassing innocent people isn't the way to do it. Go home, Miss Washington." Zora left the station, tears of frustration burning her eyes. Only one day left before DeAndre took the plea deal, and the police wouldn't help. That evening, she followed Jayden again. This time, he met some friends behind the old factory building, a place kids went to hang out away from adults. Zora crept close, hiding behind a dumpster, and used her phone to record their conversation. At first, they just talked about normal stuff: school, basketball, girls. Then one boy asked, "You still flush with cash from that job last month?" Jayden laughed. "Mostly spent it, but yeah, it was sweet." "Can't believe you got away with it," another boy said. "Best part is someone else took the fall," Jayden replied, and they all laughed. Zora's hands shook as she recorded. They weren't specifically mentioning the robbery, but it was suspicious. She needed something clearer, something that directly connected Jayden to Sweet's Market. The next day, her final day before DeAndre's deadline, Zora skipped school again. She showed the recording to Mr. Winters, who frowned. "It's suggestive, but not conclusive," he said. "They could be talking about anything: cheating on a test, a prank, selling stolen goods. Without specific mention of the robbery, it won't help much. But combined with everything else, the limp, his location, his history, it's still circumstantial." Mr. Winters looked sympathetic but firm. "We need direct evidence linking him to the crime." Desperate, Zora decided to follow Jayden one last time. After school, she tracked him to the mall, where he shoplifted a pair of sunglasses so smoothly the store clerk never noticed. Then he met up with two friends, and they headed toward the abandoned warehouse district. Zora followed at a distance, her heart racing. The boys climbed through a broken window into an old textile factory. Zora crept close to a cracked window, phone ready to record. Inside, she could see Jayden showing off a new pair of expensive sneakers. "How'd you afford those?" one friend asked. "Same way I got these." Jayden pulled something from his backpack, a gold watch and what looked like jewelry. "From the store job?" the other boy asked. Jayden nodded. "Sweet didn't even know I took these. Too busy dealing with the cash." Zora's breath caught. Sweet. He'd said sweet. "Lucky that Washington kid got blamed," the first boy said. "Yeah, dumb cops," Jayden laughed. "Bet they never even noticed my limp on the security video." Zora recorded everything, her hands trembling with excitement. This was it. Actual evidence linking Jayden to the robbery at Sweet's Market. But, as she tried to get a better angle through the window, her phone slipped from her fingers and clattered against the concrete. The boys inside went silent. Jayden came to the window and looked out. "Someone's out there!" he shouted. Zora grabbed her phone and ran as fast as she could, praying the recording had saved before she dropped it, and that it would be enough to finally free her brother. Zora didn't stop running until she reached the bus stop 3 blocks away. Her lungs burned, and her legs felt like jelly. Behind her, she could hear Jayden and his friends shouting, but their voices grew fainter. They hadn't followed her far. Hands shaking, she checked her phone. Relief washed over her. The recording had saved. She had Jayden on video talking about Sweet and the Washington kid taking the fall. It wasn't a direct confession, but it was the strongest evidence yet. The bus came, and Zora collapsed into a seat, breathing hard. She played the E, recording again, making sure it captured everything. The sound was muffled by the broken window, but Jaden's words were clear enough. "Sweet didn't even know I took these," and "Bet they never even noticed my limp on the security video." She needed to get this to Mr. Winters immediately. Then a troubling thought hit her. Why had Mr. Sweet identified DeAndre so confidently if Jaden was the real robber? Something didn't add up. Her phone rang. It was her mother. "Zora, where are you?" Millie called and said you left work early yesterday without explanation, and the school called about you missing classes. "Mom, I can explain." "Do you know how this looks? With DeAndre in detention, I need you to be responsible." Mr. Winters called too. "DeAndre's sticking to his decision to take the plea deal tomorrow." "No," Zora cried. "Mom, I have evidence. Actual evidence about who really robbed Sweets. I'm on my way to Mr. Winters' office now." Her mother was silent for a moment. "Be careful, Zora. I can't have both my children in trouble." At the law office, Mr. Winters listened to the recording, his expression growing more interested. "It's suggestive," he admitted. "Mentions Sweet, mentions the Washington name, mentions a limp, but it's still not conclusive proof." "What more do you need?" Zora asked, exasperated. "A direct confession. Video of him at the store. Something that can't be explained away." Mr. Winters tapped his pen on the desk. "The prosecution will say he was talking about something else entirely." Zora felt defeat creeping in. "So, this isn't enough to help DeAndre?" "I didn't say that. This gives us something to work with. I can request a delay on the plea deal, maybe get a search warrant for Jaden's house to look for the stolen items." He sighed. "But it's not a slam dunk." Zora left the office, her mind racing. One more day. She needed something stronger, something irrefutable. While waiting for the bus home, Zora noticed she was across from Sweet's Market. Mr. Sweet was outside, sweeping the sidewalk. Something about his movements caught her eye. He didn't seem as injured as he had claimed to be. The bandage on his head was gone, and he moved easily for someone who had supposedly been pistol-whipped badly enough to need stitches. On impulse, Zora crossed the street. "Mr. Sweet, can I talk to you once more about my brother?" The store owner frowned. "I told you I identified the robber. It was your brother." "But how can you be so sure? The security footage was grainy, and I have evidence someone else did it." "Jaden Carter." Mr. Sweet's face changed at the mention of Jaden's name just for a second, but Zora caught it. Fear? Recognition? "Never heard of him," Mr. Sweet said too quickly. "Listen, girl, I've had enough of your family. Your brother's taking a plea deal tomorrow, and that's the end of it." "How did you know about the plea deal?" Zora asked, suddenly alert. "That's not public information." Mr. Sweet turned away. "I heard about it, that's all. Now get off my property before I call the police." As she left, Zora remembered something. Mr. Winters had mentioned from the police report, "The camera that caught your brother wasn't the only one. I had another behind the counter, but it wasn't working that day." Why would a store owner not fix a security camera? Unless, at home, Zora called Rico Martinez, a senior known for his computer skills who ran the school's tech club. Rico, if a store uses cloud-based security, would the footage automatically back up somewhere, even if the owner said the camera wasn't working? Rico sounded intrigued. "Depends on the system, but yeah, most cloud setups auto-back up everything. Even if the monitor in the store was off, the footage could still be uploading." How would someone access that backup? You'd need account credentials, username and password for the security service. A plan formed in Zora's mind. It was risky, maybe even illegal, but DeAndre's future was at stake. The next day, during lunch break, Zora positioned herself where she could see the back of the ET school. Sure enough, she spotted Mr. Sweet talking with Jaden Carter in the parking lot. They were arguing. She managed to snap a few photos with her phone before they noticed her and quickly separated. That evening, Zora returned to Sweet's Market after closing time. From across the street, she watched through the windows as Mr. Sweet counted the day's cash. But instead of putting all the money in the safe under the counter, he pocketed a significant amount. Zora took photos of this too, making sure the time stamps were clear. The next morning, the day DeAndre was scheduled to take the plea deal, Zora arrived at Sweet's Market before opening. Mr. Sweet was unlocking the door. "I need to talk to you," Zora said firmly. "We have nothing to discuss," he replied. Zora held up her phone, showing the photos of him pocketing cash. "I think we do." Mr. Sweet's face paled as he looked at the photos on Zora's phone. His eyes darted around the empty street. "Get inside," he hissed, grabbing Zora's arm and pulling her into the store. He flipped the sign to closed and locked the door. "What do you want?" he demanded, his friendly store owner act completely gone. "I want the footage from your second security camera," Zora said, standing her ground despite her racing heart. "The one behind the counter that you claimed wasn't working the day of the robbery." Mr. Sweet laughed, but there was no humor in it. "There is no footage." "I think there is," Zora countered. "Cloud backup automatically saves everything. I bet you didn't actually disconnect the camera. You just said it wasn't working, so no one would ask for that footage. You're just a kid. You don't know what you're talking about." "Then you won't mind giving me access to your security system account to prove it," Zora replied. "Or I could take these photos of you stealing from your own register to the police. I'm sure they'd be very interested." Fear flashed across Mr. Sweet's face. "You don't know what you're messing with, girl. Go home and forget what you saw if you know what's good for you and your family." Zora pulled up her phone's keypad. "I'm calling Detective Morris right now, unless you give me access to that footage." They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Mr. Sweet's shoulders slumped. "Fine," he muttered. He went to the computer behind the counter and logged into a website called CloudGuard Security. He turned the screen toward Zora. "There, see for yourself. Waste of your time." Zora moved to the computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she navigated to March 12th, the day of the robbery. There were two camera feeds, the main one that had caught the grainy image of the robber in a black hoodie, and a second one behind the counter that showed Mr. Sweet and the register. She clicked on the second camera's footage and started it at 6:10 p.m., just before the robbery. Mr. Sweet stood behind the counter, looking at his watch repeatedly. At 6:14, the store door opened, and Jaden Carter walked in, his limp clearly visible. He wore the same black hoodie from the security image that had been used to identify DeAndre. But what happened next made Zora gasp. There was no real robbery. Mr. Sweet nodded at Jaden, who pulled a gun from his pocket. No customers were in the store. Jaden walked up to the counter, and Mr. Sweet whispered something to him. Then Jaden pretended to hit Mr. Sweet, who dramatically fell back, touching his head. Jaden took money from the open register and ran out. The whole thing was staged. "You faked the robbery," Zora whispered, turning to Mr. Sweet. "Why?" Mr. Sweet's face had gone ashen. "Insurance money," he finally admitted. "Business has been bad. I needed cash. Jaden agreed to help for a cut." "But why frame my brother?" Zora demanded. "Why not just report a masked robber you couldn't identify?" Mr. Sweet's expression hardened. "Your father Calvin Washington. He's the reason my last business failed. My dad? He's been gone for years. What does he have to do with this? 10 years ago, I had an appliance store. I was doing the same thing, staging break-ins for insurance money. Your father caught me on camera when he was installing a security system across the street. He reported me. I lost everything. Zora was stunned. So, when you saw DeAndre, I recognized him as Calvin's son, the spitting image of his father. When I needed a scapegoat for this insurance scam, it seemed like perfect justice. Zora quickly used her phone to record the security footage playing on the screen, making sure to capture Mr. Sweet's admission too. Then she sent the video to her mother, to Mr. Winters, and to Detective Morris with a simple message. Proof of DeAndre's innocence. Sweet's market robbery was staged. You're finished, she told Mr. Sweet. The police will be here soon. Mr. Sweet lunged for her phone, but Zora was faster. She dodged him and ran for the door, unlocking it and bursting outside. She kept running until she reached the police station 3 blocks away. Detective Morris was stunned when she showed him the footage again. Though clearly uncomfortable, he had no choice but to act on such clear evidence. We'll bring in Sweet and this Carter boy for questioning, he said grudgingly. By that afternoon, both Mr. Sweet and Jaden had been arrested. Under questioning, Jaden broke down and confessed that the robbery was staged for insurance fraud. He admitted that Mr. Sweet had instructed him to wear a hoodie similar to DeAndre's. With the overwhelming evidence, the charges against DeAndre were dropped immediately. By evening, he was released from juvenile detention, walking out into the sunlight a free person after 6 weeks of wrongful imprisonment. When DeAndre saw his mother and sister waiting, he ran to them, engulfing them both in a tight hug. "You did it, Zora," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "When everyone else gave up, you kept fighting." Zora smiled through her tears. "That's what family does," she said. "And that's what justice should do too." In the aftermath, Mr. Sweet and Jaden faced serious charges for insurance fraud, filing a false police report, and framing an innocent person. Detective Morris was placed under investigation for ignoring evidence and rushing the case. Mr. Winters publicly admitted he should have done more to investigate. The town of Millfield had to face uncomfortable questions about why they had been so quick to believe DeAndre was guilty without solid evidence. Many of DeAndre's classmates apologized for doubting him. As the Washington family walked home together, they knew things would never be exactly the same. DeAndre still had nightmares about his time in detention. Zora had seen how easily justice could be corrupted. Their mother had discovered how quickly neighbors could turn against them, but they also knew they were stronger together. And as they reached their front porch, with the evening sun warm on their faces, they felt something they hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The Washington family stepped into their home together, forever changed but unbroken. That was the end of this story about DeAndre Washington and his sister Zora's fight for justice. Where are you listening from today? If you enjoyed this emotional journey, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more engaging stories like this one. Don't forget to share with your friends and family to help spread kindness and awareness about important issues like wrongful conviction. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful stories to life. Thank you for listening.